Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today I'm very honoured to speak with none other than Gilbert Verdian. Gil, thank you so much for being on the channel today.
Brad, thank you. Appreciate it. Very excited to meet you. Thank you.
Likewise, mate. And if for those who may not know, he is the CEO of a very exciting and very innovative blockchain project, and it's called QUANT Network, or more importantly, it's called Overledger. So, Gil, obviously you have a very significant background in the cybersecurity industry. You have 20 years, in fact. You've been a CEO, a CTO, and a CISO. There's many more things, but rather than me tell you, how about you tell the audience exactly what you've done in this space and why you're so fit for the job?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Good question. So my background has been working in cybersecurity for 20 years at a very technical level. I started very early on in the early 2000s in security architecture, penetration testing, which is hacking into governments and companies to test the weaknesses and being the good guys to test it rather than the bad guys. So I started my career very technical and then worked my way up into the C-level more recently across government and banking and financial services. So I'm a techie, but that's moved up into the management world. But I love technology; it's a passion of mine. So for me, blockchain is a really good application of good security. It does a number of things that we do in security quite well, and it's put it together in a very nice way to make it what it is today. So it's cryptography, it's hashing, it's the way it does consensus amongst mining and all the protocols underneath that. So it really, to me, it's just another security technology that's matured.
And Gil, in that respect, what was interesting, having researched a bit about you before the interview today, is that you were fortunate enough to come across the white paper very early in 2008, I understand. Can you talk us through that and how impactful that was, even at the government sector with your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time, around 2008, I was working as a CTO in the UK government in the Treasury. So the Treasury runs all the economy in the UK. And I was at a government conference, and I got up and spoke, and I said, "Has anyone here seen or heard about Bitcoin?" And no one knew anything about it. There wasn't a single person from any department, including the intelligence guys, law enforcement, all the other departments. No one knew anything
Except you.
So except me. So I'm one of those techie guys that constantly keeps up to date with the latest things that are happening. So funny story. I spoke, and then at the tea break, the intelligence guys, which is kind of they're called GCHQ, which is the equivalent of the NSA. So they had a chat to me. They said, "What is this thing?" And I educated them, and they went off and did their research. And then I went back to work and spoke to my peers in the department, and I got the Treasury to do a policy assessment on blockchain. Which included Bitcoin. And they looked at it, and as a government, we looked at it and said, this is a toy thing. It will never have any material impact to the UK's economy.
Wow.
And that was 2008. So
that's incredible.
And that was correct at the time. So yeah.
Sure, and obviously now we're seeing a very different landscape. In that respect as well, obviously you have a not great deal of knowledge in the blockchain sphere. Let's now talk about essentially the project itself. Obviously it's called Overledger. On the internet there's a slogan that says you're the first blockchain operating system that facilitates the development of multi-chain applications, or MAPPs as you call them. So let's unpack that a bit. Let's try and pull that apart and find out in a nutshell what essentially is Overledger.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I could start with where Overledger came from, because it's another story from government again. So I mentioned earlier, I was the CISO of Department of Health in Australia, so from 2014 to 2016.
Okay.
And so CISO is the Chief Information Security Officer. So my accountability was to make sure all the health records are safe for the country. And at the time, I had an issue where there was lots of different systems, lots of different networks, and health records and data were spread out all over the place across different jurisdictions. So it was a problem, and I thought, you know what, this is a really good idea for Overledger for blockchain. Sorry, it's a really good use case to solve. So I started working on that as a blockchain use case. And then I did it for health, and then the Standards Australia guys down there said, look, this is a good idea. can we turn this into an ISO standard?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, absolutely. And I ended up founding the blockchain ISO standard, TC 307. And this is, right now, we have 46 countries working on this together to solve the problems of blockchain, to create a common standard across all blockchains.
Which is quite interesting because that leads in very well to this idea of interoperability that obviously you're going to explain through your plan. But that's significant in itself, then, that you spearheaded that entire, arguably, intergovernmental project.
Yeah, so basically the idea was to take blockchain out of, so 2014, right? So think about what was blockchain back then. It was all dark web, the Silk Road, all that stuff. It was quite negative. So to standardize the technology and getting all these different countries involved meant that we could actually bring it up from the dark web and make it legitimate and make it adoptable and accepted by enterprise.
Sure.
So if government can understand it, then enterprise and companies can use the technology and they could endorse it, and then citizens can benefit because you've got all this blockchain technology. So now there's like 46 countries working on this, and it's not just the countries themselves. There's representatives from the European Commission, from SWIFT, from IBM, from Hyperledger, from Microsoft, Sony. All the big companies around the world are working together as part of this ISO standard to solve blockchain standardization.
Wow, and that certainly injects a lot of credibility in your position, having started that process. So thanks for that sort of segue into what you're doing. Now, with regard to Overledger itself, you alluded to this idea of interoperability, which many of the audience may not know. So how does that concept fit in with this overall overarching structure that you've designed, utilizing blockchain?
Yeah. Excellent. No, that's a good question. So what we're doing with interoperability and Overledger is allowing the connectivity and the blockchain connectivity to existing networks without changing any of the underlying blockchain, or without adding anything that gives you more complexity or more overhead or more risk. So if you think about it, the internet was never the internet that we know today. Back in the early 90s, the internet was a closed network, and that's what blockchain is today. Blockchain is a series of different proprietary closed networks that operate in isolation.
Right.
And if you think what happened with the internet, you had CompuServe, America Online, Prodigy, all these closed, online service providers that were connected and just within their world, but disconnected from each other. They kind of failed. I mean, they didn't last. And the thing that made the internet what it is today was interoperability. When you break down those walls and you allow connectivity between these proprietary networks, then the internet happened as we know it. So blockchain is at the same junction right now, and that's what we're solving. So we're actually giving these proprietary networks of blockchain, so the Ethereums, Hyperledgers, Ripples, and the next generation ones, all the Neo and all the new ones that are coming out. So we're allowing them to open up and connect to each other without adding any additional complexity to it. And we're using the same mechanism as what happened with the internet, where we're learning. We use the learnings from TCP/IP and the OSI stack and how all these things happened to mirror the evolution of the internet, to evolve blockchains, to make them open. So we're kind of liberating all these people who are stuck inside one blockchain to be able to talk to all the other people on all the other blockchains.
It's almost as if you're learning from the first iterations we've seen with blockchain evolution, with its design being a single blockchain project. We've seen it move from the BTC designs of the original white papers through to the forking of different blockchains. We've seen Ethereum do that, and now we're arguing that there is generations 3 and 4 emerge. What's interesting about what you're saying is that you're doing one step further, and you're essentially connecting those dots via what is not, from what I can understand, a consensus algorithm in and of itself, but in fact it's new technology that's going to allow this conversation between blockchains to emerge, arguably not just for the sake of it, but for enterprise as well.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly it. So we're not another blockchain. People find that hard to believe. So Overledger is the operating system that, in its core, is a protocol that allows the connectivity between different blockchains without adding another blockchain on top, another consensus, or some limitations on how to connect. So if you look at what's happening within this space, there are a few projects trying to tackle this, and we group them and we call them interoperability blockchains. So there's ones like Aeon, Polkadot, OneLedger, Icon, Arc, Sidechain, Interledger, Cosmos. Yes. All of those are actually another blockchain. And so we're taking this from experience. We're taking an enterprise approach to this because what enterprises need is less risk and seamless connectivity for this to work.
Right.
And if you want to do this at scale, introducing an overhead on top of another blockchain is not the right way to do it, and it won't scale. Mm-hmm. So one thing that people in our experience, enterprise will change their backend and their systems to connect with you. And Ripple failed to do that very early on. And I think it was 2013, they were doing a trial with Westpac, which was a bank in Australia.
That's right, yes.
And it was one of the early adoptions of this. And Ripple came in and said, "Oh, we're a blockchain. This is what you do, and this is how you connect." And they made Westpac change a lot of their backend for it to work. And basically, Westpac just said, "No, we are not going to change us to work with you. You have to change yourself to work with us."
I see.
And I worked at HSBC for quite a while in security in my career. So at HSBC, we spent something like £6 billion a year to keep the existing systems running and to maintain it. There's no way in hell that HSBC is going to go to any vendor and say, "Yes, we'll change everything for you." Not going to happen. It's the other way around. So the technology has to adopt itself for the enterprise to use it, and that's what we've done. So with Overledger, we've created the protocol and the operating system to connect blockchains together in a very seamless way without changing any of the blockchains. So right now, there's 5, 10, 15 blockchains. In 2 years' time, there could be another 100. We'll connect all of them. To us, it doesn't make a difference. And what we're doing is allowing that gateway and that connectivity from an enterprise like HSBC and Westpac to connect to all blockchains at the same time without changing anything really on their end. And that's quite powerful because that's the right way to do it, and that's the right internet scale way to do it, which is what we're doing.
Right, and that sounds exciting given that no doubt enterprise is key for blockchain to really flourish and become what is to be a mainstream adopted technology. If we could now talk about some of your features as well, Gil. Obviously you have some key ones. We've addressed the problem and solution that you provide, but there's also there's specifics of your technology. Could you tell us a few of them, that really make you stand out?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing we don't do is we don't provide any more overhead. So we have a very, very raw way that the way TCP/IP does it is to connect from chain to chain, and we allow that interoperability to them in a unique way, and that's what we've patented. So we've got a patent that's filed in the EU for the core of the technology. Everything else around it is all open source.
Right.
So we're building this for the community. We're building this to connect networks, and this is for people to flourish and build their multi-chain applications, which we're calling MAPPs on top of Overledger. The approach we've taken is quite unique. A lot of the other technologies look at how you connect from chain A to chain C. They make you go from chain A to chain B, and then from B then to chain C. So that's inefficient. That really adds a lot of overhead to do it. So we're direct, and in terms of the way we've done it, we're the only technology that's end-to-end. And end-to-end interoperability means it's the only technology that does any number of chains to any other number of chains. So Cosmos, as an example, the way they're doing it is you want to connect from A to B, you have to connect from A into the Cosmos hub. It does all the processing, and then from the processing, then it goes and connects into the destination chain. So that's another overhead that you didn't have before. So it's not end to end. It puts it into a connector. Some of the other technologies make you connect to a new blockchain. So Aeon, they make you connect to Aeon 1.
They do, yes.
So for an enterprise, that's a resilience issue. You know, that's a single point of failure because you want to go from A to B, you have to go through another hop to do something else, do another consensus, and then from there go into, you know, the destination. So that approach again is not the ideal way to do it.
Well, Gil,
because you're adding overhead.
Gil, thank you for
Yep.
clarifying that. Let's talk about that a bit more because it is really a key feature of your technology with regard to the reading and writing. If we talk about in the context, let's say, of block A and block B, in the sense of how this technology would apply and be really simplistic in its process to essentially facilitate a transaction or facilitate a use case where two blockchains are interacting.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we're doing it is, so we've got an overledger sits on top, so it's an overlay. It really on top of existing blockchains.
Yep.
And then because of that, we can read and write to any source and destination chain and any source and destination block. We're doing, it's all in our, it's a very technical.
Yes, I have had a look. It's very technical. You have a technical white paper that's, you know, for the very tech savvy, let's say.
It's 50 pages of you know, science,
right?
And so it's very technical. So I mean, we're using a thing called a two-phase commit in the way to do it, and so the approach we're taking is to decouple the messaging layer from the transaction layer. So we've got a common messaging layer across Overledger, and so it reads on one. Does the ordering and filtering, which is the core of the technology that we've invented, and then from there it's able to put it into a common messaging into these virtual blocks, and then from there it works out which destination you are right to. And one thing we found, and I don't know many people that have solved this, but we discovered it earlier in our research, was if you're writing to a destination block and for some reason that's not the right chain, you know, things happen and chains get cut off
because of verification.
Yeah. So we invented something called a verification block, and this was again leveraging our technology and experience from working in enterprise. So the verification block sits there and it polls to see what you're writing sits and is committed to the right chain, which is going to be the immutable one, and it keeps doing it until it's happy and it's confirmed that yep, this is the destination, it's going to be the right one, and then it does it and it's good. But if it's written to the wrong chain and then you know that chain gets cut and it's no longer on the immutable chain, then the verification block does it again to make sure it goes into the right chain. So that's quite unique to us, which we've invented,
right?
And we use a technology which you know, from our experience used before, called trust tag, in the way that the hashing works in order to do that as well.
And I think what's interesting too also, Gil, is that you're using those that layered system so that you can have essentially a degree of focus with regard to what is closed source and what isn't. The majority, as I understand, of your work is open source. You have an active and flourishing GitHub where people can go and access certain codes now. But can you tell us a bit more about that patent and, you know, what's involved, where it's patented in the EU at the moment? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So the patent is really, you know, less than 5% of what we're doing. Everything else is open source. So the patent only covers a small bit. So the patent is the secret source, and this, you know, people can download this as well. It's within the patent office.
Right.
And it's the way that we've done the reading and the writing and then the filtering and ordering. So if you think about it, you have 3 blockchains that you're reading and writing to at the same time, and then what you want to do is take something from blockchain A and put it into blockchain C, and then you want to make sure that it's the right block and the right sequence of the block. You don't want to write to the wrong one and then it gets dropped and all that sort of thing. So the patent is really the invention of how we do that filtering and ordering of all the chains and all the blocks that we're bringing up into Overledger to process.
Yes.
Not process in the sense that it's doing things. It's just putting them in order to know where does this go from a destination.
Sure, and that essentially is used for any type of blockchain, and even non-blockchain, as I've heard you mention in other interviews with Hashgraph. So
yes.
in that respect, obviously you do have a key feature. It's very important. But let's talk about that now. That in the context perhaps of applicability in terms of the context of enterprise. So,
Yep.
what would be advantageous? Why would enterprise consider you as opposed to another technology?
Yeah, absolutely, and that is one of our big focuses, is to solve the enterprise problem. And if you look at where, as an industry, where we are with blockchain, it's 2018, 2017, people were experimenting. 2018, we're having live implementations, real world use cases of blockchain, being implemented.
Yeah.
So from an enterprise, and we are working with enterprise customers currently. One of them is one of the biggest banks in the world right now. We can't name yet,
No,
but we will
Lloyd's,
shortly.
is it?
No, bigger.
Okay,
So,
wow, that's good to know.
yeah, so the discussions we've had with them, they have said, we experiment with blockchain. We've done all of it, right? We've got hundreds of experiments running. We've done proofs of concept, but as a bank, we don't know which one to back, and that's the problem that we're solving. We're giving enterprise the flexibility and the choice that they've never had before. So the problem they've got is, if they, let's just pick Ethereum, like if they build everything on Ethereum and they put hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds on Ethereum, on the investment, and something happens and they can't use Ethereum anymore.
Very high risk.
High risk. They put all the eggs in the one basket. Something's gone wrong, and they're stuck. All the customers are stuck. Things stop.
Right.
The bank stops operating. So that's a huge risk to them, and they can't afford that risk.
Right.
And also, if they're in the current approach, if you're using a proprietary blockchain, you're limited to that technology and you're limited to that vendor. You can't really move off them. And one thing people haven't realized is, if you're the size of a big bank and you have hundreds of transactions happening, hundreds of millions of transactions on the chain, and for whatever reason the gas price goes up on that chain, you're stuck. That's a monopoly. So it's something outside of your control, and that's something that enterprises do not like. They can't operate in that way with that much risk.
Sure.
So what we're doing is we're giving them choice and saying, look, you can use Ethereum, you can use Hyperledger, you can use IOTA at the same time. You can actually have multiple versions of your DApp that's on one blockchain. You can transform it and upgrade it into a MAPP, and then you can spread that across different chains. So it gives you better resilience, it gives you better control, and it gives you better flexibility to do things differently, because you're using the benefits of multiple chains. And the last thing is, if you're building a banking application on blockchain, you're again limited to the features of that one blockchain. What if you want to use features of different blockchains? Because you like the consensus mechanism of one, you like the scale of the other, and you like the transaction speed of the third. You can't do that today. So right now, that's what we're giving people, that to leverage and benefit from all the features of all the different blockchains.
And Gil,
at the same time.
It's very exciting, mate, because obviously there are very few technologies that can do that. And for those who are trying to grapple with this, essentially what you're trying to do is be a one-stop shop to allow for these enterprise banks, it may not be even banks, it could be other enterprise sectors, to shop around, to build out a portfolio of blockchain projects that really suit their needs, and they can design their own suite through your technology, and that's quite unique. We haven't seen that emerge really in the space at all, certainly not in some of the examples. We are seeing some now, which we will talk about later. But if we could now move across to perhaps the on-ramp nature of, I remember reading about that allows for that interlinking between blockchains. Can you tell us a bit about that and why that's important, that design?
Yeah, exactly. So the on-ramp is what we're building, which is again leveraging our trust tag technology. That's another technology that we've got, and that's live in production. We've got customers using trust tag and the hashing mechanism that's used in there. That's something else we invented. So the on-ramps is basically the unique way that we're connecting into the different blockchains, and so we're starting off with the main ones, with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then moving into the second generation ones, and it's really community driven. So the roadmap is quite open, and it's what the community wants. So if they want us to connect, I don't know, IOTA next, we will do it if that's what the demand is. So it's our methodology and our approach to sit on top of a blockchain and read and write to it in that unique approach and way that we've got, which doesn't add any more overhead or any more consensus or another blockchain on top.
Right. So, Gil, in that respect, is it fair to say that you are a protocol that is agnostic? You don't have any preference to any. You're looking at now two of the more popular ones currently in terms of applications and use. But are you open to utilizing new and upcoming blockchains as they emerge?
Yes, absolutely. So our roadmap is to connect all blockchains, and we can't do everything in one go. So we'll start with the ones with the critical mass and the most demands initially, and then if there's a new blockchain, and actually I know there's one in Sydney University called Red Belly blockchain, and that's an experimental one that does 600,000 transactions a second. Yes. If the industry and community say we want this because we want to do super fast transactions, faster than Lightning Network, faster than anything that's out there, then we'll connect to it. I mean, our mission is to work with the community and connect all these networks up to give that openness and let it flourish. So definitely we will work with everyone.
I see. So essentially it really is a lot like a decentralized version of TCP/IP in trying to interlink all of these different projects together. If we could talk about now a little bit more about your enterprise. I do want to delve deeply into the sectors. My understanding is you have approximately 4 core foci that you want to work with, such as the health industry or others. Finance, I think, is something you're also looking at. So can you tell us a bit more about those and what you're doing in those spaces?
Yeah, exactly. So our approach is twofold. Is one, working with companies that and sectors that have blockchain and help them, give them choice. So the example with the bank that I said. The other approach is then
we didn't really say. You could tell us.
the unnamed bank. Yes. So the other approach is to work with companies that need blockchain, but they don't know how to go about it. So we're doing, as part of our approach, we've got a consulting background working with EY and PwC, and CSC was Colin used to work there as well. So we've done this before in our careers. So it's to sit with them as a customer, and we're creating something with Alchemy, which is one of our partners. That it's management consultancy here in the UK. So we're going to create something called a blockchain factory. Okay. And so we sit with the customer and say, what business problem have you got today? What are you trying to solve? And then you map it. So you do a discovery phase and you say, well, here's how your business process works. This is how complex it is. Then find the use case that blockchain can solve that and Overledger can solve that. And then build it for them. Do rapid prototyping and say, well, here it is. We've built it in a week. Let's try it out and see how it goes. And then if it works for them, then take that prototype and put it into production and create their own map for that enterprise that solves that problem. So our approach is to target the 4 sectors. So financial services, one of the leaders in the field, they've been quite early adopters of blockchain. Right. Healthcare is potentially even bigger than financial services. There's so much efficiency and leverage that blockchain can bring to healthcare and reduce costs, reduce errors. There's a lot that can happen in healthcare. So we're working with healthcare companies in that, and part of our business model is also to create maps that people can just use. We're looking to create healthcare specific maps, right? And then supply chain. So supply chain is a really, really good use case, because if you think about the way that business works, you have a trade finance, you have supply chain, you have this whole value chain that goes end to end, and then they need to talk to each other. So if you have one part of the chain, of the supply chain, working on a database, and then another part of the supply chain that creates the widgets or something that you do is working on a blockchain, and then your company is on a different blockchain, then none of these things can talk to each other. So we're bridging that gap and allowing interoperability, so the supply chain can actually talk to each other. Right. And that's quite powerful, because even in one company, there could be 300 different business units, 300 different entities globally, all be using from blockchain.
And
they can't talk to each other internally.
And
So,
Gil, and what's exciting is that you're not only talking about industries, you're talking about those in the context of many different nations around the world. You obviously want to build this in a global sense. But I did want to be direct and ask you, no doubt you have people knocking on your door in those industries right now. So what can you tell us about the interest that you've already garnered from these sectors, even, even locally?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, as I said, we've been talking to customers and working with them on this and making them realize what we're building and the benefits that they can. So so in this
just to
space,
clarify, by customers you mean significant enterprises or even businesses that are not your average
yes.
run of the mill local business.
No, these are global companies that we either have worked with, know from our networks, or they've approached us. So yeah, I mean, we've been in the industry for 20 years. We know the right contacts in the different areas to approach and discuss. So one I can actually talk about is in government. We have a regulator that has actually said, can we build a KYC AML map for them?
Okay.
In terms of sitting on top of all the different blockchains, looking at all the transactions and helping them identify, money laundering, the bad stuff, and the patterns behind it. So that's going to be one of the first things that we're looking to build, for a regulator, because
that's significant. We have to do talk about that because that's really for a very far-reaching audience. That's for the entire, nation itself. If it's for KYC.
Yes. So it says, I used to work in the regulator, so I know what the concerns are, and it's around what happens within the crypto space or the blockchain space. How does that affect the stability of the financial system? And that's what they're concerned about. And so that's why there's a lot of regulation around AML, know your customer, KYC, and know your customer's customer as well. So KYC. So they need to have that visibility, to have that assurance, so they can actually regulate properly. Because if they're not doing their job properly, then they have to change laws and increase regulation to make it stable again.
Sure.
Or decrease regulation. I mean, there's lots of use cases where regulators have let the industry self-regulate and said we won't step in unless there's a crisis.
Sure.
And we saw that in the financial crisis. So yeah.
We talked about an example of one of those maps that are coming out, but what about in, let's say, for example, we extrapolate that ID into specific use cases, like at airports, for example. I understand that there is something happening there whereby someone can identify themselves as they move in from various different, perhaps, regions and using different blockchains even.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working with another startup in the UK. So they're doing the proof of concepts for Dubai Airport, and so that what they're looking to do is around self-sovereign identity. So allowing people's identity, not just their passport, but their full identity, to be stored on a blockchain. So when the end use is, so when you come off the plane at Dubai Airport in the next few years, your passport information is not emailed around, or a database doesn't sync it to another database like it's traditionally done. It's on a blockchain, it's immutable, so you come off, you're recognized instantly by the immigration system, and so it gets rid of all those booths where you have to line up and you have to show your passport, they check it and all that sort of stuff. So all those things are checked using your biometric triggers, and because you're recognized, you're on the chain, your ID is validated, then you walk through and you bypass all those slow bottlenecks of immigration, and you come out and get the taxi. So that's the use case for Dubai Airport, and that's great, and that's a brilliant thing to solve. It's going to make everyone's life easier. But the problem is, well, what if Dubai Airport is using blockchain A, and then your flight then you land in Amsterdam or in London, and London Airport uses blockchain B, then you have to go through that all over again each time, because they're using different versions and different blockchains.
Well, that's when we call you.
That's it, yeah. So what we're doing is allowing the transferability of your identity across different chains to give you that seamless experience on when you board a plane and when you come off on the other side, because they're using a different blockchain on each end, and it makes no difference because the identity is transferred. So that's a really good use case, because people can understand what it means to them. Another one, actually, because we did a quiz in one of the channels, and one of the questions was, what problem does Overledger solve in the real world?
Right.
And someone gave a really good example, which just blew me away. I just didn't even think about it. None of the team thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically said autonomous vehicles, all the cars that are being built, they're all being connected to blockchains. And there's examples of Porsche doing that recently.
Sure.
I know Mercedes, BMW, they're all exploring this because there's a lot of benefit of having all the telematics and all the stuff with cars on a chain.
Mm-hmm.
So the person said, well, what if 4 different car manufacturers use 4 different blockchains, and you're driving around and you want the car, autonomous vehicle, to talk to the next car saying, please get out of the way, I want to turn left, or whatever, the transfer of data between them. They with the current proprietary method, they will not be able to talk to each other on the street. So what we're solving is car communication across different technologies and across different chains. Right. And that's where the future's heading. We are heading to that, and we're solving that now.
So essentially you're being part of the real world problem, or solution rather, of interconnecting the decentralized web of information.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. Yeah.
And doing it in a business sense. And thank you also for the examples of the use case. Could you explain for a moment though, Gil, obviously the map itself, not your typical map that you read for finding treasure, but the map you represent, why is it such a key feature in comparison to an app, or to a DApp, or the D app as they call it?
Yeah, so apps and dApps, so they're written for a particular blockchain. So you can have a dApp that's a decentralized application sitting on Ethereum, and it works, on Ethereum, and that's great. And similar with smart contracts. Mm-hmm. So everything works on that one chain, and it is as is. So the problem is, well, what if someone else is using another distributed application on Hyperledger, and you want your application to talk to the other application because there's a data transfer to verify something, or a handshake or something? You can't do that easily today. The technology limits you because you build something that's proprietary talking to something else that's proprietary. And if you think about it, we've had this problem many times before. We've had the same issue where people built a proprietary mobile network in GSM. It only worked in your country, and when you moved to another country, there was no roaming. It didn't work. And then similar with databases, similar with directory services, Novell and Microsoft, with their Active Directory, that there was proprietary technology which then didn't work. So the challenge is the dApps are great, and the apps that people make are great, but they're limited and they're stuck. So what we're doing is kind of liberating them and making them open by upgrading them into a map. What happens then is your application can then live and run on Ethereum and Hyperledger and Ripple and IOTA at the same time.
So simultaneously cross-chain.
Cross-chain, instantly out, or it's up to the developer to say, well, my application, I want it to be 80% to be on Ethereum because that's what we're comfortable with. But the 20%, I want to do something on a faster chain. If it's processing like some data, for example,
sure,
you can move that 20% of your map into a faster chain, like the Red Belly blockchain. Yep, and let it do its thing, and then whatever the output is, then also bring it back into the chain, and then let Ethereum do the rest.
So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of customizability there. You can really make it suit your needs, which is a really exciting thing that you can do.
It's opening. Yeah, exactly. And it's the same for smart contracts. So this is really important in the business world. When you have a business logic that's coded into a smart contract, it currently exists on one chain. So what we're allowing is recognition and transferability of that smart contract, or the output of that smart contract, from one chain to another, so a business process can then continue to do something else. So you can do an insurance claim. It runs on one smart contract, and it does the processing, and then the output of that needs to get routed into a database in a server in Germany, and then from the database it has to go to another chain to do something else. So we allow that transferability and the recognition of smart contracts to be multi-chain.
And Gil,
Yeah.
And Gil, in that respect, obviously, given that you are essentially the glue between the blockchains, you aren't so worried, I would assume, about scalability itself, because that's really up to those independent blockchains to ensure they are as scalable as possible.
Exactly, yeah. So we're not adding any more overhead to it, and what we're doing is we're respecting the rules and the speeds of each blockchain as they are. So if one blockchain has a 10 transaction a second consensus, one has 10 million, and they do their thing, and it's proof of work, proof of stake, proof of whatever. We don't care. It makes no difference for us. We're connecting to all of them and allowing people to use all of them at the same time. It's just up to the developer or the enterprise to say, well, I want to use this blockchain and this one because they suit my needs, and we just make that happen.
Makes perfect sense. Well, if we could talk about some dollars right now in terms of revenue. Obviously, every enterprise wants to make money. No doubt you do as well. You need a token potentially to do that. But let's talk about exactly what your token is for. It is unique, when we're in the crypto space, and let's find out why. Because obviously, you're not a typical crypto. So can you tell us why that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not a coin. We're not minting a new coin for people to trade and buy stuff and that sort of thing. So what we are, so the Quant token is it's a utility token, and we've done this at a very high standard. We've partnered with KPMG, so we've engaged them in Switzerland. They've done all our regulatory, legal, tax, everything with the regulator and everything in.
So you're very legit.
More than that, yeah, absolutely. We're doing everything at a very high professional standard. That's just our backgrounds. We wouldn't do it any other way.
Sure.
So we make a token where it's a security or a payment token, and it's not a hybrid token. So Quant the QNT token is actually a utility, and what we mean by that is it's an access token. So you need Quant tokens to access Overledger and the network behind it, and also to run the maps. And if you think about it, we're not inventing something new here. This is pretty much the same as Apple with their iPhone. You pay them £1,000 and you buy an iPhone, but what you're getting with that iPhone is some keys, and the Quant token is exactly the same. You're getting the keys to access the App Store, which is what Apple are doing, and we're allowing people to run maps and access the network similar to the way Apple does it, because tokens are just PKI. They're just encryption keys, and we're using the background in security to do that. And we have a bigger use for these for Quant token. It's not just to run maps, and it's not to access the network, but it's also to be able to connect. And one of the roadmaps that we've got is we want to connect the internet to blockchain, and that's a powerful statement. And if you really think about it, you can't do that today. You can't really connect from the traditional internet to the blockchain, which we're calling the Internet of Trust,
right?
Easily. You have to come and go through servers and connect into the distributed network and whatever. So the Quant tokens are a vehicle in order to be able to connect these two mega networks together, and they have a bigger purpose that's in our roadmap coming up.
I see. So they're a key access utility. If we can talk about that in the context of what we've typically seen as well, Gil, we've seen the influx of cryptocurrencies come in. Often we've seen the sheer scale of initial private sales and pre-sales emerge, where whales get in and they manipulate markets. Arguably, you're not even considering exchanges. Is that right at this point?
Yeah, so in line with regulation, we don't have a plan right now to list on an exchange, and it's all against, which I mentioned before, stability, right? So financial stability of the market. Excuse me.
That's okay.
So what we are doing is focusing on building the technology, and that's our immediate need, and what we're delivering and promising to the market, which we will do. But at the same time, we do want to create new products, and one of them could be a distributed exchange on top of Overledger, and that's one of the things that we've talking to partners about in the UK. We've got two financial services companies that we've been talking to where they operate currently, licensed, regulated in traditional products, in equities and derivatives and that sort of thing, and they want to do that similar rigor, but in the blockchain crypto space. And so we could create a distributed exchange for them that's fully compliant to regulation, and put that on Overledger. And so, again, the Quant token can be part of that. But we're also looking to the market to see, well, in the future, maybe in 3 months, in 12 months, don't know, whenever, to see, well, does the market want tokens to be traded on a centralized exchange, or they want it on a decentralized exchange, and explore it there in line with regulation. So we're keeping the options open. It's not closed, but we just want to see what the market, the sentiment is at the time.
I see. So obviously you do have, in a sense, a unique design. You are so genuinely focused on being that utility. So Gil, obviously you have clear intentions for it to be a utility, but there is a bit of a paradox in the sense that there is your private sale and your pre-sale as parts of your overall token release, and many people do think of that as a form of investment, whether it be a utility or not. So how does that situate itself in this context, and how can you explain,
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we've got it worked out is that there is a need for token, and there's only a supply, and so when people are buying them, they're buying access to the network, which other people are going to need to have access to the network. And we haven't set a price to say, to use Overledger you need to have 1 token or 0.001 token. We're leaving the flexibility open to let the market decide that. So that's going to, I don't know, it's going to happen next year sometime, Q1 2019,
right?
When we're working out the the MAPP store and releasing the technology then. So what we're doing with the token is we're driving demand to Overledger with developers creating maps and us building the platform and the MAPP store to create more maps, plus the enterprise customers that we bring on board. So if we have a big bank with 10 million customers and they want to put I don't know, their peer app, whatever it is, a messaging app on our MAPP store, then they're going to need access for all their 10 million customers. So again, there's demand for the token in order to do that. So we're driving the use and the demand of the platform, tying it to the token, which then increases the demand for the token. So there is a need for this. It's a critical piece. It has a big piece in what we're doing in the future, and there's always going to be a need to have these, to access essentially the future internet, with the internet of trust, which is all distributed, hyper distributed, and it's powered by the Quant token underneath it to have it as the key to access it.
So essentially, that's how you can synergize, these precepts of investment with the utility that you represent, because it is finite, and there, as you said, this is going to build out substantially as you unfold in the enterprise space. If we could talk about your token though itself, in terms of its cap, the tokenomics and the fundamentals, could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're creating 31. We're selling 31 million tokens. So we did 15 million Quant tokens, which was for the pre-sale and the private sale in one.
Yes.
And that was running until I think it was the 1st of April. So we finished that on midnight, the 1st of April, and that was sold out. We hit that cap, and people have been buying them, and that was done on the 1st. And on the 2nd, we released the sale, the TGE, the token generation event, and there's 16 million tokens for sale for that, and that's running until the 30th of April, and that's been going quite well as well. So we've been getting a steady stream of demand of people putting orders in, and we've built our platform, we call it Sentry, to onboard and take all the orders and all that stuff, and do the KYC in an automated way ourselves, and we're going to release that as well for the community. So we're going to open source Sentry, and it just means other people who would like to do an ICO or a token generation event can use our platform to register people and buy tokens for themselves as well. So we're yeah, the tokenomics, there's 31 million. In terms of what we're selling, it's pegged to ETH. So for the pre-sale, it was, one ETH was 687 quant, and then for the main sale, it's 430.
I see.
And that's the cap that they're working towards.
I see, and it sounds like you're quite optimistic about it, just from the way you've explained the process so far.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, we've had a huge demand for it. We're a bit overwhelmed of, on the pre-sale when it went live. It's like, wow, this, 4,000 people signed up and they were ready to go. It's, and so we were quite surprised in demand. But I guess we believe in our technology, and we have the right team to do it. And we're doing all of this, not just to benefit a few or we're doing this for everyone, to open up networks for it to flourish.
Right.
And so we really see the benefit, and people are seeing that as well. We're really humbled by the support that we're getting in the channel, and when people get the idea and get the concept and they get behind it, they really understand what we're trying to achieve.
Sure. And Gil, you say we. Let's talk about your team for a moment. I had a look through. It is quite impressive, the skill sets that you do represent. But tell us in a nutshell why your team is so strong, and how big is your team, and what's the plan for it to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the team, we're all enterprise professionals. We've been working in industry for quite a while. On average, it's about 20 years for each one of us. We've been around and we've done this before. So we're not just a bunch of guys who can code and have come up with an app, and we want to do raise capital and launch an app that does one thing. We're really creating an ecosystem. So the team, we're all professionals with enterprise experience who for us, blockchain is another technology that we love and have adopted. It's not the only thing we know. I mean, the guys in the team. So if I talk, I've talked about my background, but if we talk about Paolo, so he's the executive director of the Blockchain Institute at UCL.
Okay.
And so UCL is University College London. It's the biggest blockchain institute academically in the world.
Wow.
There's 500 students working. There's an executive blockchain, kind of like an MBA being taught.
That's very impressive.
He's a economist background. So he's worked in a central bank in Germany on the economic side of things. So he brings that to the team.
I see.
And then at the same time,
and obviously, Phil, in that respect, you're planning on building out your team as well. You don't just have these excellent exemplars of entrepreneurs and blockchain experts, but you want to build that capacity as years go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're really fussy in who we bring on board. We're only looking to bring on board the best.
Right.
We have the experience and the technical know-how to realize the people that we meet.
Sure.
And we have the networks, so if we need someone to work on, C or C# to do assembly level, packet switching, we know the right person who's done that in a bank, and that's been their career for the last 10 years, and we can bring them on. So
I see.
So we're quite picky to pick the right enterprise experience people. We're not just hiring anyone that has a bit of solidity experience or something. So we're being quite selective, and we are hiring constantly. So the thing is, we're building an enterprise operating system. So we're not building a blockchain. We don't need people who know how to run Ethereum code or fire up IOTA or Neo or whatever. So we need
no
people
Tangle, no deep PBFTs and all of those things.
Yeah, exactly. But we need people who know how to build internet scale enterprise software, and that's what we're hiring.
I see. And obviously, the ICO process itself is really what affords this process as well, Gil, in that it provides you with that capital to then go and inject that into your growth. And that, I suppose, lends to the roadmap itself. What specifics have you got planned with your alpha, with up and coming things in even Q1, Q2, Q2, Q3, 2018?
Yeah, absolutely. So The good news is a lot of the stuff that we've been working on is ready, and we've developed it. So we have multiple components that make up Overledger.
Right.
So the verification block, the hashing, the APIs, all these things that have been built and they're ready and they're in production. So with the verification tag, we have customers using that for another use case, and that's live in production. I mean, you can use it today. So with our roadmap, what we're looking to do is for the next version of the alpha is to have that in Q2 this year, and this is the open source SDK, which allows you to read and write to a blockchain or two blockchains, and do that through the API through Overledger. And so you'll be able to download it. It's open source. It's going to be on our GitHub.
Okay.
And you can just use it and do a read and a write and watch it work, and then start playing with it and start building a prototype map to say, well, this is what I can do. I can have my I can have my photo sharing app write to Bitcoin and write to Ethereum at the same time, and put my photos on the two chains at the same time. So you can do the basics very early on. So we're ready to release that very, very early on. And then we're going to continuously develop this, and with the on-ramps that we're building is connecting to all the other blockchains and getting it to beta version 0.2, version 1, and then just constantly do this. So it's an evolving operating system that constantly needs work, and that's what we're building. So we're ready to do that. And then at the same time, we want to showcase, hey guys, look what's possible. Here's some apps that we've built, some maps. Here's an identity one. Here's a middleware that we want to create. So we want to create that middleware that sits on top of Overledger that gives you, let's just say, authentication across all chains. So you want to do something with security. You want to authenticate your users to different networks and different chains. You don't have to go build one each time, right? So you can use ours. We'll build a middleware and open it up and say, hey guys, go for it. Build your authentication things on top of Overledger.
I see.
So we want to, do a few of those software as a service products and showcases, and then get ready for the App Store. So we want to do that in Q1 in 2019.
Right.
And this is a chance for people to, they'll have a year to play with it and come up with ideas and do things, and then they can publish it on the MAPP store and let others use it and let it flourish.
I see. Well, in that respect, Gil, I wanted to ask you, you're going to have your own app store or MAPP store, you could almost call it. Obviously, the buzzword right now is the ideal of decentralization, but you're going to have these products that are essentially in a centralized location, but you are a multi or hyper decentralized system. So can you explain a little bit about the differences of the two?
Yeah, so the MAPP store is just a marketplace where you can actually see the different examples of all the maps, and the MAPP store, it's just like any other online web platform. It'll be published online, and it'll be shop there. Yeah, exactly. So similar to the Apple App Store and the Play Store.
Okay.
It's an online shop, so you can go and find maps that interest you, and then you can download and buy them and use them or whatever. So it's a similar concept, but the maps and none of that is centralized. The maps live we're starting to use the same term as well. We're calling it hyper decentralized applications, because they're never in the one place, or they're never on the one chain. They're all multi-chain.
Which again is new to us. It's a novel sort of concept that we see now.
Yes, exactly. It's a new invention.
Well, given that, it makes perfect sense to discuss competitors in the space, because we've alluded to some that are in that single vertical, operating as single blockchains in many instances. But there are some emerging, Gil, that aren't. For example, Untitled or Morpheus Labs. There are some that are not only parallel scaling, but they're also trying to be that one-stop shop protocol that interlink as essentially a blockchain glue. So in that respect, is there a place for the emergence of more than one of these kinds of protocols, or one of these kinds of services that link them together?
Yeah, I think the market needs a lot of these solutions to be solved, and people are doing it in different ways, and that's fine. And if it fits people's needs, then they can use it, and that works for them. Then that's a good thing. But the one thing to add, a lot of these approaches. So OneLedger, as again, it's another blockchain. We're grouping a lot of these into a single category, and we're calling them interoperability blockchains.
Right.
Because they're sitting either as a side chain or a virtual chain on top of Ethereum and Neo and Hyperledger and whatever.
Sure.
But they're making a consensus or something that happens on Ethereum go and connect into OneLedger's blockchain, do that all over again, and then go down into the other blockchain and then do a lot all over again. So they're not truly interoperable because they're producing overhead and adding another complexity on top of what's already within a blockchain. So I think these solutions, there's quite a few, and yeah, you mentioned a few, so Aeon, Polkadot,
right.
OneLedger, Icon, Arc. They're all doing it in a similar way, but I think from our experience, that way produces more complexity, and that's not going to go down well with enterprise. They don't.
Sure.
They want to de-risk what they're doing in blockchain, not increase risk.
Well, there is one that I did want to broach with you specifically, and that's called Ontology. Obviously, I know quite a bit about that, haven't spoken about it many times. It essentially is a cross-chain, cross-protocol, it's a cross-design in many respects. It is a robust architecture and framework in itself. So I guess the question I want to pose to you is it plausible to suggest that these kinds of cross-chain designs we're seeing emerge, like Ontology, could intersect and work compatibly with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're treating these new generation of blockchains as third generation. So the first generation was the Bitcoin,
right.
and even Ethereum and Ripple and Stellar and those guys. So they're first. Second generation is the new stuff that's come out, like IOTA, Cardano, Waves, Neo, etc. And then you've got this third generation, which is Ontology. So for us, we're agnostic. We kind of don't care what the underlying chain is, and it doesn't affect how we do it. What we will do is connect to first and third and 10th generation blockchains,
right,
and allow people to decide which features of those blockchains and interoperability blockchains they want to use and they want to benefit from. So we will sit on top of existing and future chains as well as interoperability chains to allow that connectivity the way TCP/IP does it for the internet.
I see. And obviously you need a good, robust social network and even, a great media team behind you. If people wanted to know more about you, Gil, as Overledger and even your overarching Quant network, how could they do that? What are the best sources of information?
Yeah, absolutely. We're quite active. It's a new thing, engaging the community very directly for us. I mean, we're kind of used to the corporate way where you have media teams and your comms people and that sort of thing.
Right.
So we are. I mean, I'm on Telegram all the time. So that's quite a good channel. If you go to quants.network and go to our site, we've got our link to Telegram. So if you go to telegram.quants.network, you'll come to our community. We've been doing it in a very professional way. We're not it's not crazy like some other communities where there's 20,000 people, just sending spam around. It's really controlled. It's very diplomatic. It's very professional, and we like it that way. So we're we have really good technical discussions. We have really good engagements on how does this token utility work? How does this work?
Sure.
And then we discuss that. So feel free to come and engage us. We're on Telegram all the time. We've got community managers, and it's a nice controlled way. We're quite public, so we're doing a lot of these. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
No
We'd like to talk. We're at events. We're in London, so we're in all the London events mainly.
Right.
We like to engage people and get their feedback and get them involved and get them asking the right questions, because we want to do this collaboratively. And we're in the middle of the ICO, the Token Generation event, so that's all within our site as well, so people can look into that and ask us and discuss that with us too. So we're quite active. We can be more active, but we really we're doing the best we can to engage. So,
well, Gil, we really appreciate your time today. You've really shown us a full, robust and holistic picture of essentially what Overledger is. Is there anything you wanted to add? Perhaps that there's a burning thing inside you wanted to address to the community about Overledger that we may have overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, if I can summarize, I mean, we're doing this, for benefiting the community. We're not doing it just to create something and go buy Lamborghinis and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't interest us at all. So we're really technology purists, and we're really looking to solve this problem for the community and for enterprise. And we'd love you guys to tell us what you can do with it. I mean, we don't know everything. When Apple built iOS and Windows, from Microsoft, they didn't know what people are going to build on top. And we're kind of in that same situation. We want to engage and get ideas and get feedback and help you and work together to come up with all this new stuff that's going to really be the next generation of internet, next generation of blockchain, and to benefit people. I mean, we're doing this so, you don't have to do an identity check with your bank and then do it again the next time and do it again the next time and do it, so we're doing that. So you do it once and then you've done it once forever and that's it. You don't have to do it ever again. So we want to really change how people and business operate by making it easier and more efficient and giving them the benefits of the blockchain technology, because it really is a cool technology. So we'd love to work with the community more and come to our office. We're in Shoreditch. Come and have a coffee with us. Let's get involved and let's get more engaged.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that open approach. For all those who don't know, obviously Overledger and the Quant network, they are coupled, they are linked, they are very important for interoperability of the future. They are certainly a technology, not a blockchain, that is going to pave the way for enterprise transformation in the decentralized space. Clearly, you are the first blockchain operating system that facilitates the development of MAPPs. They are the multi-chain applications of the future. We really appreciate your time. We really do look forward to watching you unfold in the enterprise space. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Brad. Really appreciate the time and the effort you've put into to meet with us, and thank you for the opportunity. We look forward to talking again, maybe in person, in
Australia.
Australia. So
that'd be awesome.
Thank you
very much.